Hello everyone, this is lecture 8 of EEE 153 on MIPS multi-cycle data path. In this lecture, we'll discuss why we are designing multi-cycle data paths, what are its advantages and disadvantages over the single-cycle implementation, explore how a sample MIPS multi-cycle implementation works, still supporting the same set of instructions from our previously discussed single-cycle data path implementation. We'll also cover how to implement a multi-cycle control, specifically using an approach called one-hot encoding. And lastly, we'll formalize what we mean by performance and include some performance computation examples and also quantify speed up. Our objectives for this lecture are the following. First, identify which limits the clock speed in a single cycle data path, explain the motivation behind multi-cycle implementations, understand how a multi-cycle MIPS data path works, implement a simple multi-cycle data path controller using one-hot encoding scheme, and lastly, compare the performance of a single cycle and a multi-cycle data path. Let's review first how our single cycle data path works. However, this time, we'll also consider how the signals propagate in time. Here we have an add register 2, register 4, register 5 instruction stored at address 0. The execution of the instruction starts with the PC containing and outputting a value of 0. By this point, other control signals are not yet ready or valid. After some delay, the instruction code will be fetched, and alongside this, the values for RS, RT, and RD can be extracted. While this is happening, suppose the adder connected to PC is able to finish computing PC plus 4, which is 4. After some delay, the register file will be able to output the contents of the register operands R4 and R5. By this point, let's assume the control unit has finished generating all the necessary control signals, and therefore it has already allowed RD and PC plus 4 to pass through multiplexers. Also, the control unit should have been able to feed the ALU with the correct ALU op corresponding for addition. After some delay, the ALU will be able to output the sum of the contents of R4 and R5. All the signals must also be ready by this point, including the write-enabled signals. However, it is only after some delay that the clock is safe to be asserted to let the registers prepare for the writing process right after it is provided with the valid data. At this mentioned delay, the hardware simply waits for the clock rising edge for the write to PC and RD to occur. Eventually, the rising edge occurs and the mentioned registers are written too. This illustration also shows the delay due to instmem from PC to the instruction code, the delay due to the PC adder, the delay due to the register file from RS and RT to the read data outputs, the delay from the ALU, and the required timing margin called the setup time for the registers. With this, we have identified the minimum time before we can assert the clock for the add instruction. However, is this the one we should use for the data path considering that there are other instructions? Let's consider a larger set of instructions that include add, load word, and jumps. Let's also assume that we have ideal registers with 0 setup time and ideal multiplexers and control unit with 0 delay. With this, we need to consider, for the add instruction, the delays due to the instruction memory, reg file, and the ALU. Let's say we identify the delays of each block as shown. This tells us that for add, the signals become valid or ready after 150 nanoseconds. Now, what are the delays we need to consider for the load word instruction? For the load word, the ALU computes the effective address, passes it to the data memory, and the data to be written only becomes available after some delay due to the data memory read access. If the data memory takes 60 nanoseconds, then the whole process will take 210 nanoseconds. Lastly, recall that jump instructions do not need to access the register file and also do not need the ALU. Let's say that the address computation takes 40 nanoseconds, so the jump address will become ready at the input of the PC after 100 nanoseconds. Thus, we need 150 nanoseconds, 210, and 100 nanoseconds for the add, load word, and jump instructions respectively. The question is, what then is the minimum clock period which will be the safest to use for the single cycle data path? Do we go for 150, 210, or 100 nanoseconds? To answer that question, we must remember that the clock period for single cycle data paths is determined by the slowest instruction or the instruction with the longest delay. In our example, the longest delay is 210 nanoseconds for the load word instruction. Note that if we use any clock shorter or faster than 210 nanoseconds, then the load word instruction will not be able to execute properly as some signals are not yet ready when the clock rising edge occurs. Now, since we have used 210 nanoseconds to accommodate the slowest load word instruction, then there are portions where the processor is simply waiting and not doing anything as indicated in the gray portions. This is obviously a waste of both time and resources, and by resources, we mean hardware resources because our data path is not processing anything new. We can also say that inherently fast instructions are slowed down by slower instructions. In this example, the add is forced to execute in 210 nanoseconds even if it could have finished by 150 nanoseconds. This happens because the data path shares or operates at a single clock frequency throughout its operation, regardless of whatever instruction has been fetched from the instruction memory. The goal of multi-cycle operation is to minimize the wasted time waiting in the data path. To do this, we can divide the instruction execution into multiple stages. We will then allot one clock cycle per stage and not per instruction. This leads to one instruction being executed over multiple clock cycles. With this approach, the clock can be made faster as we are operating on a per execution stage basis. However, this time, the maximum clock speed or minimum clock period will be dictated by the slowest stage. Multi-cycle operation also enables the data path to spend time executing stages only necessary to the function. If we go back to the example, there was an unused 60 nanoseconds for the add instruction because each instruction is allotted some time for data memory accesses, which the add instruction does not use. With the single cycle data path implementation, we were restricted to a minimum clock period of 210 nanoseconds to accommodate the slow load word instruction. If we were to execute an add, a load word, and a jump instruction in succession, then we'll need 3 clock cycles to complete the 3 instructions, and it would take 630 nanoseconds to finish. Suppose we are to go with a 1 cycle per step implementation, what then should be the clock period? Going back, it was actually the instruction memory and the data memory accesses that takes the longest time, both at 60 nanoseconds. Thus, to ensure that each step finishes correctly, the minimum clock period must now be 60 nanoseconds. Note that the delays for the instruction memory and the data memory just happen to be the same in our example. The delays for the two memories are not always necessarily the same. Also, a different block may have the longest delay in some cases. For example, the ALU may be the slowest block instead of the memory. Now, going back to our example, since the add needs 3 clock cycles, while the load word and jump takes 4 and 2 respectively, then the total number of clock cycles to finish the 3 instructions listed must be 9. And therefore, the total time to execute them is 60 nanoseconds times 9, or 540 nanoseconds. Thus, we were able to reduce and improve the execution time from 630 nanoseconds to 540 nanoseconds. However, do we expect to always see this amount of improvement, that is 90 nanoseconds faster for every 3 instructions? The answer is actually no. Consider 3 consecutive add instructions as shown. With our single cycle data path operating at 210 nanoseconds, this will take 630 nanoseconds to finish. However, with a multi-cycle data path operated with a 60 nanoseconds clock, and with each add instruction needing 3 cycles to finish, then the execution time must be 540 nanoseconds. We also know that the execution time has improved as intended for this case. Now consider another set of 3 instructions, but this time, all of them are load words. Again, with a single cycle implementation where each instruction finishes in a single cycle, the 3 load words will finish after 3 210 nanoseconds or 630 nanoseconds. However, load words need 4 of the identified steps to finish: IM, RF, ALU, and DM. Thus, 3 load words will need 3 times 4 or 12 clock cycles to finish. With each cycle at 60 nanoseconds, a total of 12 times 60 nanoseconds or 720 nanoseconds is needed, and thus, in this case, going for a multi-cycle operation actually increased or degraded the execution time, and we concluded the improvement or degradation of execution time in going from single to multi-cycle depends on the instructions to be used or considered. Let's proceed with the construction of a possible MIPS multi-cycle data path implementation. To do this, we must first define how the instructions are divided into multiple clock cycles. For example, let's say we want to divide the R-type instructions add, sub, and OR into 4 clock cycles with the following tasks done per cycle. For cycle 1, we will update the PC and fetch the instruction. For cycle 2, we'll fetch the operands from the register file. For cycle 3, we'll perform the ALU operation, and for cycle 4, we will write the result into the register file. Note that in this implementation, the number of clock cycles for an R-type instruction increased from 3 to 4 because we dedicated a separate clock cycle for writing into the register file. Next, consider an add-I instruction. The easiest way to implement a multi-cycle data path is to use similar stages across different instructions. Thus, we will also divide the execution of the add-I instruction into 4 clock cycles. There are 2 noticeable differences. 1. The immediate sign is sign extended at clock cycle 2 at the same clock cycle where the register operands are fetched. The second difference is that the sign extended immediate is used as the second operand to the ALU at clock cycle 3. Now that we have divided the instruction execution for R-type and add-I instructions, what changes then do we need to apply to our data path to achieve this behavior? To do this, we put registers where the flow of signal is to be cut or blocked by a clock edge. Aside from blocking the signal, these registers also act to save the intermediate result in between instruction execution steps. Since the first clock cycle ends with the instruction fetch, then we put a register IR, which stands for instruction register, right after the instruction memory. We also put registers D1 and D2 at the 2 register outputs, ALU reg at the ALU output, and lastly, memreg for the data memory output. Now, since the combinational paths in between registers or memory elements are shorter, then we can now use faster clocks. Note also how we have added write-enable signals specifically for PC and IR. This is to ensure that intermediate results are not overwritten unwantedly. Note also how this time only one adder is present in the branch computation path. The reason behind these changes can be understood better in the next few slides. To demonstrate how the presented multi-cycle data path works, consider the add-I instruction shown, which is stored at address 0x40. We'll also use color-coded signals to indicate when the annotated signal values occur. First, we start with the PC value being 0x40. This address is passed to the instruction memory and the add-I instruction code is fetched. The instruction code appears on the input of the IR. The instruction code will not yet make its way to the RS, RT, and RD wires on the first clock cycle. The adder on the left is also able to compute PC plus 4 within the first clock cycle. For this to happen, cell PC increment and cell jump must both be deasserted or 0. Note that we want PC and IR to be written at the first clock cycle, so we assert their write-enabled signals on the first clock cycle. When the clock rising edge occurs, the PC and IR are written too. Thus, at the second clock cycle, the PC value is 0x44, and this value is still being received by the instruction memory, so it will output whatever the next instruction is. However, we want to make sure that we maintain the currently stored IR instruction or instruction in the IR, so we will deassert the write IR signal until the whole instruction is finished. While this happens, the other on the left still computes PC plus 4, which now outputs 0x48. However, we do not want to increment PC by more than 4 from its original value, so we have to deassert write PC as well until the whole instruction is finished. Still in the second clock cycle, the values for RS, RT, and RD can be extracted from IR, and after some delay, the register contents will be available at the register file output. The IR also provides the 16-bit immediate, which can now be sign extended on the second clock cycle. When the second clock rising edge occurs, registers D1 and D2 will store the recently read values from the register file. On the third clock cycle, all the inputs to the ALU is already available, and the effective memory address will be generated at its output and is saved at ALU reg. At the fourth clock cycle, we don't need the data mem, and we can proceed to the write back stage. The output of the ALU reg is allowed to make its way to the write data input port of the register file with cell data reset at 0. Also, the correct RD is provided to the register file, and when the write RF signal is also asserted, but only on the fourth clock cycle. Throughout the ADI execution, the write mem signal must also be deasserted to prevent unwanted writes to the data memory. When the clock rising edge occurs, the result of the ADI instruction will then be stored at RT. Okay, some important notes on the multi-cycle implementation we have demonstrated. First, the PC update to PC plus 4 always happens at the first clock cycle. Thus, the write PC control signal must be deasserted on other clock cycles, unless of course if we want to branch or jump. In the same way, the IR or the instruction register is written only at the first clock cycle based on the initial value of PC. The write PC prevents the next instruction to be written in IR while the current instruction is not yet finished, even if the PC has already been updated in the first clock cycle. The sign extended immediate 32, becomes available at cycle 2, but the register operands become available only to the ALU from D1 and D2 at cycle 3. Since the ALU will have to wait for all inputs to be valid, the ALU output only becomes valid at the middle of the third clock cycle. The write RF is asserted only when the write data becomes available at clock cycle 4. This prevents unwanted writes at earlier clock cycles where the write reg and write data signals are not yet both valid. Thus, the control unit needs to delay the asserting of some control signals. Write mem is also deasserted over the whole operation to prevent writing to the data mem, since we are considering only R-type instructions and add I so far. Now, let's say we add support to store word and load word instructions by following the steps as displayed. The first 3 cycles for load word and store word are actually identical to that of add I. In the third clock cycle, the sum of RS and the immediate will be saved to ALU reg. However, its eventual role or use is different from add I and store word and load word, as add I uses the sum as the final result, while store word and load word uses the sum as the address for data mem. At the fourth clock cycle, the fetched value from RT is saved to the data mem for store words. On the other hand, for load words, the fourth clock cycle is dedicated to fetching the data from the data memory. A separate clock cycle is dedicated for writing into the register file, just like how was done for the write back of R-type and add I instructions. Let's see how the signals will and should propagate and vary across clock cycles as we execute a store-word instruction in our proposed multi-cycle data path. From the image shown, the store word is stored at address 0x2c. The first clock cycle starts with the PC having a value of 0x2c. Since we are not branching, cell PC increment and cell jump are both 0, and the PC plus 4 value of 0x30 appears at the PC input after some delay. Simultaneously, at the first clock cycle, the instruction is fetched and appears at the input of the instruction register IR. The write PC and write IR signals are asserted, and the values are saved into the PC and IR at the end of the first clock cycle. On the second clock cycle, since PC is already 0x30, then the following instruction is fetched and appears at the output of the instruction memory. A value of 0x34 also appears at the PC input. However, both values are not saved since write PC and write IR will both be deasserted from the second clock cycle onwards. On the second portion of the data path, the IR already outputs the correct instruction code, so the correct RS and RT values are already available. After some delay, the reg file will output the contents of these registers. The write register is also a don't care since we are writing into the data memory and not the register file for a store word instruction. The write RF signal is also deasserted. Meanwhile, the immediate value, -16, is sign extended. When the second clock rising edge occurs, registers D1 and D2 are written to. At cycle 3, the outputs of D1 and D2 will be valid, although the immediate will be the one allowed to pass through the multiplexer, so cell of B must therefore be set to 1. Note that at this point, the write data for the data memory is already available at its input, but the write mem signal is not yet asserted as the address is not yet provided. After some delay, the ALU will be able to generate the sum, and the control unit must also instruct the ALU to perform addition via the ALU op signal. At the end of the third clock cycle, the sum or the effective address is stored at ALU reg. At the fourth clock cycle, the address is fed to the data mem and the write mem signal is finally asserted only at this point. Also, whatever appears on the output of the rightmost multiplexer is a don't care since the write RF signal is deasserted. At the end of the fourth clock cycle, the data from RT is finally written at the desired memory location within the data memory and the store word instruction execution is finally completed. Okay, this time consider a load word instruction at address 0x30. At the end of the first clock cycle, the PC is updated to 0x34 and the IR is written with the load instruction. At the second clock cycle, the PC sees as an input of 0x38 but will not be written as write PC is deasserted. The IR also sees the next instruction but will not be stored since write IR is deasserted as well. Still at the second clock cycle, the RS and RT values become available and read from the register file, although the contents of RT will be considered as don't care because RT is a destination register for load words. However, its value will not be used yet at the second clock cycle. The signed extended immediate is also prepared at the second clock cycle. At the end of the second clock cycle, D1 and D2 are written too. At the third clock cycle, the ALU computes the effective address from RS, which is R4 in this case, and the immediate. Note that cell of B is again asserted and ALU op is for addition. At the end of cycle 3, ALU reg is written too. At the fourth clock cycle, the address is fed to the data memory, and after some delay, the contents of this address will appear at the read data output port of the data memory. The write mem is also deasserted since the start of the instruction, as we will not write into the data memory. At the end of the fourth clock cycle, memreg is written to with the fetched memory data. At the fifth clock cycle, this fetched data is fed to the register file with cell data set to 1. The cell dest signal is also set to 0 to allow RT to drive the write reg input of the register file. In this example, the destination RT is register 22. The write RF signal is also asserted only at the 5th clock cycle. At the end of the 5th clock cycle, the register file is written with the data from the data memory, completing the load word instruction. Here, we lay down the division of steps we'll assume and use for the last set of instructions we will support, the BEQ, BNE, and jump instructions. For BEQ and BNE, the first and second clock cycles are the same as the previous instructions. For the third clock cycle, the branch target is computed and saved to PC depending on the comparison result. The comparison is done by subtracting the contents of RS and RT. For BEQ, we branch if the zero flag is asserted as a result of the subtraction. For BNE, we branch if the zero flag is deasserted. Note that we are adding PC plus the immediate, since by this point, PC already contains PC plus 4 as it is updated in the first clock cycle. For jump instructions, the first clock cycle is still for PC update and instruction fetched, while the second clock cycle is for jump target address computation and saving this value back to PC. Here, we demonstrate the flow of signals for a branch if equal instruction in our multi-cycle data path. The BEQ is stored at address 0x38 and fetched from the instruction memory with the help of the PC. At this point, we still don't know that the instruction is a branch instruction, but we just proceed by simply incrementing PC by 4 either way. At the end of the first clock cycle, PC is updated to 0x3C and IR is written with the BEQ instruction. At the second clock cycle, the PC does not care what is at its input, since write PC is deasserted on the second clock cycle. The same is true for IR, with the write IR deasserted. Still at the second clock cycle, RS and RT, 3 and 4, become available, and after some delay, the contents of R3 and R4 are fetched from the register file. Note also that RD and the write reg input are don't cares since we are not writing into the register file. Write RF and write mem are also deasserted. The immediate is also sign extended and shifted left by 2 or multiplied by 4 at the second clock cycle. Since the immediate is 4, the output of the shift left by 2 block is 16. D1 and D2 are written too at the end of the second clock cycle. At the third clock cycle, the adder on the left computes the branch target from the updated PC plus 4 value and the sign extended immediate and feeds it into the PC in case that the branch must be taken. The branch target address is 4C since 3C plus 16 in decimal is 4C. Select PC increment is set to 1 while cell jump is set to 0 for this to happen. To evaluate the branch, D1 and D2 contents are subtracted. The ALU is fed with the ALU op for subtraction, while cell op B is set to 0. Assuming that the result is 0 and the 0 flag is asserted, the control unit will be prompted and assert the write PC signal. Thus, at the end of the third clock cycle, the PC will be written to with the branch target address and the instruction is completed. If the branch is not to be taken, write PC will not be asserted, and even if the branch target address appears at its input, the PC will still maintain its value, which is the updated PC plus 4. Now that we have seen how a multi-cycle data path works, let's summarize some key concepts and observations. First, and as intended, the execution of instructions is divided into multiple clock cycles. This is done so that only stages necessary to the instruction are executed to minimize the dead time and make execution faster. In a multi-cycle data path, the clock is dictated by the slowest step or stage. The data path is divided by inserting registers. These registers also contribute additional delays and timing constraints, although we did not consider this in our timing examples. Instruction can have different CPI or cycles per instruction. To be clear, some multi-cycle implementations may have the same CPI for all instructions. Next, the IR must hold the instruction code for the rest of the instruction cycles so that the control unit can remember what instruction is being executed across different clock cycles. In line with this, the write enable signals ensure that writing is done on the intended clock cycle only. This applies not only for PC and IR, but also for the register file in the data memory. If you may have noticed, D1, D2, ALUreg, and memreg do not have write enables since the inputs to them remain fixed once they are written with the valid values. This is because RS, RT, and RD, the immediate, etc., become fixed once the instruction is held or fixed in IR. This eventually leads to registers D1 and D2 and so on being fixed. Some control signals vary with clock cycle, even for the same instruction. For example, write IR is asserted only on the first clock cycle but deasserted otherwise. Thus, we cannot create a control unit from purely combinational logic alone since we must also know what clock cycle we are in. The control unit must also be able to determine when the instruction ends since we have different number of clock cycles for different instructions. To continue, the other blocks needed to increment by 4 and by the branch offset from our single cycle data path were combined. This became possible since incrementing by 4 and incrementing by the offset happens at different clock cycles, and thus multi-cycle operation allows us to reuse some hardware blocks. Also, there is no one correct way to convert from single cycle to multi-cycle data path. For example, the execution can be divided into 2 clock cycles only for all instructions instead of having 2, 3, 4, and 5 different cases. Also, we note here that dividing into a smaller number of parts is usually easier. Processor designers may choose to divide the data path in a certain way to improve speed or utilization of resources, called the load balancing technique. The goal of this is to reduce the waiting time for all clock cycles in the multi-cycle operation. For example, if the ALU takes 10 nanoseconds to finish, while the rest takes only 1 nanoseconds, then the clock will most likely be dictated by the slow ALU at 10 nanoseconds. If such is the case, then it might be better to group the instruction fetch and register fetch to happen in 1 clock cycle and finish in 10 nanoseconds instead of separating them into 2 clock cycles and finish in 20 nanoseconds. A multi-cycle approach also makes it easier to utilize a von Neumann structure since access to data and instructions happen at different clock cycles, unlike in a single cycle data path.